Hello biology students. Today I am going to go over the topic of meiosis with you. So first let's just learn a few terms. One is genetics. So this is basically the study of genetics is when you're looking at genes, genetic variation, and heredity. So oftentimes you'll see couples go to like genetic counseling to make sure that they don't have any necessarily bad genes that may cause some disorders to be passed down to their children. And then a gene is a specific region of DNA that codes for a protein. So if we look here, this is the gene for eye color. Okay, so it's on a very certain part of that chromosome. It's a very certain region of the DNA. And you will express that gene through a protein or a trait. So for example, this specific region of DNA is going to code for the brown eye color. Next, we're going to talk about diploid and haploid cells. So if it's a diploid cell, it means it has two complete sets of chromosome, 23 pairs or 46 total. So in that 23 pairs, you have one chromosome from your mom and one chromosome from your dad. That's what makes up a pair. And these are going to be our body cells. So everything we talked about in mitosis and the cell cycle last chapter, those are all going to be diploid cells. And they're going to be represented by 2N. So if you ever see that 2N, know that it's a diploid cell. And then haploid cells are cells that contain one complete sets of chromosomes. So in humans, you're going to have 23 total, not 23 pairs, just 23 total. And these are going to be your gametes. So they're going to be your sperm and egg or sex cells. And they're going to be represented by the letter N. So if we look over here at this chart, you can see that gametes and spores, that's more for plants. We're going to focus on gametes here. So sperm and egg are going to be haploid. And then all of our somatic cells, which are our body cells, are going to be diploid. So if we look here, a diploid cell, so this would be like a skin cell, here is a chromosome from mom, and here is a chromosome from dad. But in a haploid cell, you only have one of those chromosomes. You literally have half the number of chromosomes. We also need to talk about what a homologous chromosome is and a sister chromatid. So when we look here at this picture, a homologous chromosome is just a pair of chromosomes. So this, for example, would be like pair 1. And how they are homologous chromosomes is they have the same genes on them. So for example, let's say that this right here codes for eye color. This also right here is going to code for eye color. Now this one you got from mom. Okay, and this one you got from dad. So it's different. This one might code for blue eyes and this one might code for brown eyes, but the homologous chromosomes contain the same genes. So this could be maybe height right there. So homologous chromosomes, same genes, but they're a little bit different because one came from mom and one came from dad. And then when we look at sister chromatids, this is a copy of a chromosome. So when we look over here, here's our homologous chromosomes still. Remember, you get this one from mom and this one from dad. But now they've replicated. So this is a sister chromatid to this guy right here, meaning that this is the exact same. Both of these are coming from mom. It's just been replicated. So you should have filled out this chart already. So in mitosis, we produce what we call body cells, and in meiosis, we produce gametes. In mitosis, we produce diploid cells, or 2N, and then in meiosis, they're haploid. Here's a big difference here. In mitosis, we have one cell division, and then in meiosis, we have two cell division. And when it comes to exact replicas of each other, mitosis is an exact replica, and in meiosis, you are producing actually 4 non-identical cells. And then we've already really talked about the number of chromosomes in each. So here we go, mitosis. We're going to have 2 new cells that are going to be diploid and exact copies, but then in meiosis we're going to create 4 haploid cells that are individually unique. So mitosis has 2 separate cell divisions, and they have the same name as mitosis, which is really nice. So in meiosis 1, you have prophase 1 going all the way down to cytokinesis 1. And then meiosis 2, you have prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2, and cytokinesis. And the whole reason for having the 2 divisions is because we want to have 4 cells in the end. And the same things that happen in mitosis in those stages happen in meiosis as well. Metaphase, they line up in the center of the cell. Anaphase, they get pulled apart. So let's talk about the main events that happen in meiosis 1. So there's a few really important things that occur. First, in interphase 1, this is where you have your DNA replication. And it's important to know that replication only happens once. It doesn't happen again after meiosis 1. It only happens once. And that's because overall we want to reduce the number of chromosomes in the cell. Okay, and then in prophase 1, we have something really important happen called crossing over. Crossing over is where homologous chromosomes can actually swap sections of DNA. So if you look here, here's a homologous chromosome, and it's going to line up like next to each other in the cell, and two of the chromatids actually share genetic information. So let's say here, this was our eye color gene, okay? And let's say this one coded for blue and this one codes for brown. Well, now they've literally swapped from one chromatid to another. And the whole reason for this is because it creates a huge genetic diversity now within your 4 gametes that you're going to create. You have 4 chromatids, different chromatids here, where you would have only had 2. All right, so let's talk about the meiosis 1 outcomes really quickly. So remember that you're going to have crossing over occur, and you're going to create 2 haploid cells. And then in meiosis 2, you're going to have sister chromatids separate. That's kind of the important thing. So in meiosis 1, you're going to basically have the homologous chromosomes separate. So remember, homologous chromosomes would be like this. Okay, that's just the replicated version of a pair. These are going to separate. And then in meiosis 2, here's one of your homologous chromosomes left over. The sister chromatids are going to separate. So what you are left with is 1 and 1, like that, in a cell. So now you're just left with 1 chromosome, okay? And this is what allows for the huge genetic diversity is the splitting of these sister chromatids randomly. And along with random fertilization, your gametes are going to be very unique. And what do I mean by random fertilization? So let's say this is 4 sperm here, and you have 1 egg. Any one of these 4 sperm could fertilize that egg. So that's random fertilization. So here's just, once again, the overview of meiosis 2. So your sister chromatids are going to separate, and your overall outcome is 4 very unique gamete cells. And I like this picture a lot because it kind of shows everything that we've wanted to talk about. So it's important to know that in meiosis 1, right before it, in interphase 1, is when you have your DNA replication. And when it says recombination like this, that's the crossing over. That's literally swapping those segments of DNA to create unique chromatids. And then in meiosis 1, it's important to know that you have the separation of the homologous chromosomes. And then in meiosis 2 is where you have the separation of the sister chromatids. And then that's what gives you 4 haploid gamete cells. So when we look at meiosis creating human gametes, this is kind of interesting. So in males, you create 4 sperm and that's kind of it. But females are different. We produce 1 egg and 3 polar bodies. The egg is pretty much one of the largest cells in the female body. It takes a lot of cellular machinery like mitochondria, etc., and it takes a lot of energy to make. So we only create 1. The other 3 are what we call polar bodies. They're never going to be fertilized, and they're kind of here to help just nourish the egg. They don't really do a whole lot. So that's a big difference between males and females when it comes to meiosis. In females, we only create 1 egg, and in males, you create the 4 sperm. And the last thing we're going to talk about is sexual versus asexual reproduction. So everything that we've been talking about is sexual reproduction. This is when 2 parents are going to pass on their genes to an offspring, and the offspring is going to be unique. It's not going to be an exact replica of your parents. But then asexual reproduction is where we have a single parent giving rise to an offspring. So when we look at bacteria, for example, this is called binary fission. It's a type of asexual reproduction. So in binary fission, the bacterium will actually replicate its DNA, grow, and kind of segregate that DNA off in different directions, and then you'll have the splitting of the cell. So you create an exact replica. It's pretty much mitosis for bacteria. All right, so that's where we're going to stop. Thanks for watching.